All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today for our rescheduled digital drop-in about what's hot and what's not with TikTok this month. I'm super grateful to have everybody joining me today who was able to come today instead of on October 2nd. And thanks again so much for all the good, encouraging words and kind messages and just sweet, positive energy we've all been getting. As most of you know, the city of Asheville has been through quite an intense 3 weeks with a lot of different things going on, and there's been a lot of struggles, but we are making progress. We're moving forward. I feel like this last few days, we're all kind of hitting that wall of reality. So just know that your thoughts and your energy and all the good vibes that you're putting towards us all across Western North Carolina and everywhere in the Southeast that's dealing with hurricane fallout. The energy is just really helpful and good, and we appreciate it because we're going to have a long recovery around all of these things. And so saddened and heartbroken by what's happened in a lot of ways, but I've been here in Asheville for 25 years in Western North Carolina, and I also have been deeply reminded of why I've chosen to live here for so long. So with the community, we are really coming together and taking care of each other, and working to help other communities around us. And so, yeah, I just appreciate all the positive energy that's been coming our way. That being said, I'm super excited to get to do a digital drop-in. I know right now for me, it's really helpful to be working and to be doing some other things with my brain. And so I really, really am grateful to have y'all join me. As usual today, I want you to feel comfortable hopping in the chat and asking any questions as we go along. There's also a Q&A feature. And so if you'd like to drop questions in the Q&A, I'll be monitoring that as well. And if you just joined, because I saw a couple of you just join, there is a poll about whether or not you are using TikTok, and I'd love to know who's using it, who's not. And if you have a TikTok handle or a TikTok link you'd like to share with the group in the chat, please feel free to do that. As usual, I will work on the recording and the slide deck probably for the next few days. And by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, you'll get a copy of everything that you see today, along with some other resources. And so you can expect by Tuesday or Wednesday, you'll get a follow-up email, and you can share this with anybody that you would like. So if you know other folks that are working on TikTok and you want to share some information with them, don't hesitate to share the link to the recording, to share the slide deck with them. Also, I want to remind everybody that the JV Media Institute, we have an amazing Vimeo channel as well as a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel I've been building over time, but the Vimeo channel is really robust and has every single free webinar that we have done since 2015 when I started. And so just want to encourage you, you can just Google JB Media Institute, Vimeo. It usually comes right up at the top. And that is where we archive all of our recordings. So you can get lots of great information there. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Benoit, and I am the lead instructor and the co-founder of the JV Media Institute. And we are a digital marketing training company. I also provide a lot of classes and events, educational, virtual trainings. I travel and teach a lot of different subjects. I also do a lot of consulting as well. So if you are interested in learning more about our company, you can check out jbmediainstitute.com. Keeping in mind, we're making a bunch of updates right now due to what's happened with the hurricane, and some major things that are changing in our business. But please consider me a resource. When you get the slide deck, you'll have all of my personal contact information. You can also personally connect with me on social media anytime. And I always just want people to remember, don't Google things for hours and hours. If you have a question, you can't figure out the answer, always consider me a friend. And you can always send me an email or a private message. So again, I want to say thank you to everyone who's coming today and for your patience in getting all of this rescheduled and getting our company back online. And just thank you for supporting our community in so many different ways. So I want to start by talking a little bit about just what are the big changes with TikTok right now and how they're approaching things. And I think one of the things that we can see is that the way they've developed over the last couple of years does have a relationship to the things going on with their legal cases. And we're going to talk about those legal cases a little bit into this webinar. But I wanted to start just talking about the features that they are sort of really growing and building on. And again, I feel like a lot of these are because focusing in these areas makes them very relevant here in the United States, and they really want to stay here in the United States. So a lot of what they've been growing and building has been around proving their value from a business standpoint and really activating their own creators that are using the platform to grow their businesses and do sales and generate leads and things like that. So one of the areas that TikTok has really been blowing up, I think the last couple of years, is shopping and e-commerce. Now, this won't apply to everyone, but I do think that if you do have a business that has products or sort of experiences that you're selling, there's some real value in looking at what they're offering. I also think if you are a bigger organization, and let's say you work with lots of different businesses and you have more of a service-based kind of focus, there's still going to be tons of opportunities. But I do think there is some really unique opportunities in the shopping and e-commerce world. Essentially right now, what TikTok has realized is a lot of the people that would like to fight creators who have actually participated in an additional lawsuit to TikTok and ByteDance. These are creators where they are actually selling products and they're making money on TikTok. And so that sort of essential storefront aspect is something I think they've been focusing on. And 65% of TikTok users have followed or made a purchase from a brand that they've connected to through TikTok. So similar to Instagram, we see this kind of shopping community developing here. In the past year, 44% of TikTok users discovered something on the platform and then immediately went to buy it. So that's in the last 2023 to 2024 time period. What they're seeing is that when people feel connected to the accounts they're following, when they see something or discover something, they tend to actually do something about it, and that's increasing, right? And then TikTok users are 1.5 times more likely to immediately go out and buy something they discovered on TikTok compared to other platforms users. And so again, we see lots of different platforms like Pinterest, like Instagram, like Facebook, where they have these different shopping and e-commerce tools. TikTok's really making a play to go into that world. And I think their community is somewhat unique, and their community does like to stay sort of on the app and engage with others on the app. And so what they're seeing is that, again, those relationships are driving some real commerce. And it's exciting to see just a new option out of all of the different platforms. Pinterest for types of companies that have products and online stores. Pinterest has been one of the top platforms in my mind, although it's much smaller. So it's not always about the size of the platform, right? It's about the activity of the user, how excited they are to make purchases. Also, part of the shopping and kind of e-commerce part of TikTok that's growing is really growing their advertising platform. So I've been running ads actually with a university on their platform over the last few years just to connect with younger people. And I do find that their advertising system is fairly straightforward, very similar to other types of advertising platforms in the social media world, and simpler than Meta. So although Meta kind of dominates in a lot of ways, once you get to know how to use their advertising system, you can pretty much learn almost any other social media platform system. So if you're interested in TikTok ads, there's a lot going on there, and a lot of it is directly connected to the shopping aspect of the site. So again, very similar to Instagram and how its trajectory has gone over time. But 56% of TikTok users say that ads on TikTok lead them to discover new products and brands. Again, TikTok users are 1.5 times more likely than other platform users to discover brands this way. And 70% of TikTok users say it seems easy to purchase through the TikTok shopping related ad they saw. So again, shopping and e-commerce, we see that what TikTok is doing is trying to make the customer journey very, very simple and straightforward. So people can make purchases, but they don't have to leave the platform. And again, lots of other platforms have been doing this, but I have been somewhat impressed with the level at which TikTok is doing it and how seamless the experience is. And of course, they are very focused on video. So if you're going to go into the shopping world, the advertising world on TikTok, you do have to embrace video as your main form of connecting with people. So there's different types of shopping ads right now. One is the video shopping ads, right? These are basically videos you create, you upload them, and they end up in the For You part of the algorithm. We're going to talk about that too and what that is, but it really does sort of target people with products and services that are really catering to what they are interested in, right? And again, there's kind of this checkout experience that they're creating for users that makes it really easy to purchase. There's also live shopping ads. So again, we've seen in the Instagram world that different people who are selling products, when they go live, they tend to get big responses. So I know some artists that launch all their new collections by going live on Instagram, right? And so they're integrating into TikTok this sort of live experience with products into shopping ads so that you actually can boost and promote these different things as they're happening and get more people to see them. And again, it directly connects a lot of these shopping experiences to people's For You page or section of the algorithm. And again, I'll explain a little bit more about what that is. And one way that they're actually pushing into this world even further is they are doing product shopping ads. So this is where you're able to create an actual catalog of your products and host it directly on TikTok. You have to be a part of their shopping center. And there are some technical details involved in this. You have to kind of sign up for some things. If you have a website with a shopping cart and you have a catalog on your website, there'd be a number of different ways to connect those things. But essentially, they're really pushing into this world, right? Into ways that we can make it easier for people to discover your brand, to fall in love with what your brand is doing, and then, if possible, to actually make purchases from your brand, right? And they're continuing to make a lot of key partnerships around this particular type of advertising and shopping experience, right? So if you have a website built on Shopify or BigCommerce, or you're using WooCommerce with WordPress, again, you'll see TikTok is making inroads to those connections. So this is where we're just seeing e-commerce shopping, big piece of TikTok. I actually go to a store in Charlotte. She has built a lot of her business on TikTok. Her name is Juicy Body Goddess on TikTok. And they're a little retail shop owned by an amazing woman in Charlotte, North Carolina. But they've grown to over 2 million fans on TikTok. And it is a huge way that she has built a community, not just for selling her products, but also she often brings in videos girls who are buying their prom dresses. And sometimes she will fundraise directly on TikTok and be able to tell that mother and, girl, hey, your dress is paid for today. So she's not just selling products, she's building this community. I think she's a great example of somebody who's done an amazing job. So again, you can just see some of the stats here. 68% of weekly TikTok users said it seems easy to purchase in feed. 78% of small businesses who use TikTok say that the unique community is allowing them to connect in a more authentic way. And people on TikTok are 1.7 times more likely to engage in e-commerce behaviors. So again, we're just seeing, like, Pinterest is the other social media platform where we see shopping and e-commerce are taking a bigger role, and the people who are on the platform really enjoy shopping on the platform. So again, Facebook has this stuff, Instagram has this stuff, lots of other systems have it, but I feel like TikTok is going a little bit more in the direction of Pinterest and identifying that their community really enjoys supporting each other in this way. The other place that they are making big changes in their platform is with their Symphony Creative and AI Center. So this is going to include a few different features, the biggest one being the Symphony Creative Studio. So the Symphony is basically an AI assistant very similar to Microsoft's Copilot or to the Meta AI Studio that they've been rolling out. There's all these different platforms that are rolling out different forms of generative AI support. And so this is where you're going to be able to use the Creative Studio to really dig into trends, to create scripts, to brainstorm concepts, to look at the best practices, to come up with ideas for your video content. And mixed with the video editor, which you see a little bit lower down, that's where their video editor is also really expanding. So I think very similar to the Meta Business Suite, where I am getting more and more tools inside of there to manage a lot of my content on Facebook and Instagram. We're seeing TikTok kind of create these more interactive spaces. There's also interactive add-ons that are specifically created for driving engagement and interactivity. So there's all these special tools they've been launching, things like multi-storytelling, Shake Surprise, Super Like. These are just kind of interactive visual features that you can add to your content that make people want to connect more, just sort of have a flair to them, right? A lot of what goes on in TikTok is very, very creative. It's a highly creative space. And in order to make an impact there, I feel like you really have to be memorable and engaging and authentic and a little bit personal to make TikTok work in a lot of ways. And of course, part of their video editing is also a lot of cool templates, very similar to what we see in Instagram Reels. But I think TikTok is trying to kind of one up what they're doing. Also, we are in the middle of a big legal case with TikTok. And so as of September, TikTok and ByteDance have essentially appealed the decision to ban them or demand that they separate, right? So ByteDance is a company that's based in China. They basically own TikTok. And essentially what they were asked to do is to separate the two, right? And they do not want to do that. And there's many, many business reasons why they wouldn't. But basically all year long, we've kind of seen this dance back and forth through the appeals court. And essentially, in addition to TikTok and ByteDance filing their lawsuit in May, there's also some TikTok creators who filed a lawsuit as well to basically say that, you know, they will be, their First Amendment rights will be infringed upon if they're not able to use the platform. And so this is just continuing to go back and forth, right? So as of September, we're still waiting on a decision from the appeals court. And I do want to say that when this came up in front of Congress, I watched all the congressional hearings, and they did, TikTok as a platform, did create a very large and very detailed offer to the government that you can see I'm talking about in this slide, where they basically, you know, made a lot of concessions to having their servers in the US, to having a third party monitor the algorithm and the servers, to all sorts of different content moderation practices, especially to protect teens. There was all these different things that they offered, and I was actually very sad that we did not take them up on that offer, because part of what they were pushing for is that they would abide by these rules, but so would all other social media platforms, not just theirs. All Meta platforms, all the other platforms in the US would have to really, in some ways, be more regulated than they've ever been. And so I do think we had a slight missed opportunity in that option that they gave us. And so right now we're just going to have to see how the courts play out. If you click on this link to PBS, there's a great overview of what's going on there. You know, there's lots of debates right now about who's winning, who made the better arguments, what the judges think, and so forth. But I think the most interesting thing about TikTok is what's going on with the trends and the behaviors. And there's a lot of information here. I kind of highlighted the things that TikTok itself has been studying. If you've never looked at the TikTok for Business website, you just type in TikTok for Business in Google, and you will get this amazing website, just like any of the other social media platforms, where you are able to really dig into all sorts of things that they're tracking and talking about. So I did a real deep dive on that, as well as some other data. But essentially, I think, you know, with TikTok, it is similar to a lot of other platforms, but again, the trends, the behaviors, the vibe is truly a little bit different. When it comes to the For You page, TikTok is defined by that For You page. It's a big part of the system. And the people who use TikTok generally are really big fans of this For You page. So this is basically really where we see the algorithm is very good at getting to know the users and delivering things to them that they want. And so 40% of them say that the For You page is extremely or very interesting to them, right? So even though there's like a broad range in between of extremely or very interesting and not at all interesting, to have 40% of the people using the site to basically say that that sort of personalized and cultivated part of the algorithm is really strong, like extremely interesting. I think from an algorithm perspective, that's a really big deal. That's a real positive. As a user of TikTok, I actually feel that way about TikTok. I think they do a much better job of filtering content for me. Now, I think one thing you have to be aware of though is if you're not using TikTok, if you're not following people, if you're not engaging with content, it's not really about making content, right? I don't hardly make any content on TikTok, but I'm actually a user of the system. And the more that I use it, the better and more powerful it becomes in developing what it thinks is for me, right? So we're going to see that that's sort of an edge to their algorithm. It's something that the public has really liked. They're continuing to focus on that. TikTok is especially prevalent among younger adults still. So 56% of all US adults between 18 and 34 use the platform. I will say though that that does not discount the other age groups, right? So there are actually a lot of older people on TikTok now. And by older, I mean 35 and above. And mostly that's because of 2020. There were so many younger people that went home and stayed with their parents, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts during the COVID pandemic that we saw TikTok really explode when it came to the amount of people, right? The age groups, the diversity of age groups. So again, if you look at 2022 to 2024, you can kind of see just a basic breakdown of the age groups for the TikTok users. So there are even people over 55, right? That's sort of my age range. I just turned 49 a couple weeks ago. But you know, I feel like that larger group of folks here, they're still involved, and that is continuing to grow in a lot of ways, right? So if you look at the differential here between 2022 and 2024, you'll see that like the number of 18 to 24-year-olds that have kind of continued to use the site is actually dropping down, right? There's many reasons for that, but all the other age groups have really grown in the last 2 years, right? And so to me, we can see that TikTok is actually gaining momentum with people that are not just that youngest demographic of 18 to 24, right? We're seeing lots of people join. I think one of the biggest statements that TikTok makes is about how creative is the most valuable variable. It's a fundamental to capturing and maintaining the community's attention, and their audiences are really focused on fresh creative. They want to see something different. They want to see something new. There's not a lot of repetition in content. So I do feel like when you're on TikTok, it does require a real focus on that content creation. And I think you have to really follow the trends and be a part of them, right? So you have to have this kind of nimble or agile approach. I feel like with TikTok, when you're working on it, a lot of times content becomes very experimental, right? So a lot of times you want to have room, even if you have a content schedule and a content plan, you want to have plenty of room in your schedule to also be looking at your stats, on a weekly or monthly basis. You want to see what people are saying. You want to see how they're reacting. Sometimes you might have content planned and there's a trend happening. You might want to join that trend, right? And so I think it does require, if you compare it to something like Facebook, a little bit more of this like agility and nimbleness, right? And really thinking of TikTok as a back and forth as a relationship, as you know, you're not talking at people. I say that about all social media, but I think it's incredibly important when we're talking about TikTok. And I also see a lot of those same trends in Instagram. So TikTok has done some great reports. This year was the first year where they did a trends report at the beginning, and they did a trends report in the middle of the year to kind of say, here's where we thought we were going to be going in 2024. Here's where we've ended up. And so they have what they call trend forces. And inside of those trend forces, there's sort of trend signals that you can pay attention to. So I wanted to highlight the three top trend forces from this year. So first is curiosity peaked. So I think, you know, one of the things that we really want to think about is that discovery idea, right? TikTok has definitely angled itself differently than Meta, who's angled itself around connecting you with friends and family. TikTok has really angled itself around connecting you to things that you don't know about yet, that you haven't seen yet, something that's really going to pique your curiosity and get you excited, right? So I think that's a great sort of vibe to pull into it. And some of the ways that they're seeing this trend force, when we look at kind of an active way of looking at it, one is serendipitous scrolling, right? So this is where it's really important, I think, to look at how in marketing, we always talk about the unique selling proposition, right? It's kind of like taking that to a more modern perspective, right? And I think it's very valuable to think about what makes your brand, your business, your product unique, really getting kind of quirky and fun and celebrating the things that make you different is kind of a core component, right? And the goal is that when people are scrolling, that this is part of their experience, right? Is that people continue to scroll and continue to engage because they're seeing something that's new, that's interesting, that's exciting, that's inspiring them, that's just kind of like driving them to act in a lot of ways, right? So again, I like this approach because we're dealing with a lot of doom scrolling in this current world. And I think they are looking at how curiosity and inviting people to look at new things can be a way to make scrolling really positive, right? Entertainment without borders. So this is where I think it's interesting. There's a big trend along curiosity of, you know, tapping into people's cultural origins and their stories, where they come from, looking at kind of their connection to their family, to their ancestors. This is, again, a larger trend we've seen across the internet. But I think really kind of creating a space where we bring families together, we talk about our backgrounds, and with the goal that, again, if we're talking about curiosity, that this is bringing people meaningful time online, but it's also bringing them meaningful time offline, right? So this is something I've seen across my social media audits this year, is how historical content is tending to get more and more attention. And I think it's about these kind of origin story pieces and how history relates to culture. And I think expanding our view of history, right, is really valuable. And so again, just thinking about how we can tell our own personal stories, even as brands, even as a destination, or even as an attraction, or even as a retail shop, there's a story and people behind what you're doing. So how can we bring that in and, you know, take what makes us unique and also explain where we're coming from? And then there's also this trend around, you know, they use the word parodizing, which basically I defined here, a literary or musical work in which the style of the author or work is closely imitated for comic effect, right? Or in ridicule if you're wanting to make fun. But really, again, taking our creativity to the next level, right? Parodying is a big thing online. In the TikTok world, there's sort of like an even next level piece of parodying things, right? It's really kind of taking somebody's style and imitating it in different ways in your content, in order to, I think it's more fun to have it be comedy and for fun than it is for ridicule, but you'll see both. But really looking at how you can take especially trending songs, and play with them, manipulate them, right? I think as the AI tools get better and better, the video editing tools get better and better, we're going to see we have the ability to take trending sounds, trending songs, and sort of change them and adapt them for what we're doing. The next trend force It's basically storytelling unhinged, right? And again, you get the vibe when you kind of look at how TikTok presents its trends. This is where everyone can have a voice, where, we're just unleashing it. This is their whole argument in court, is free speech. I'm hoping they won't go as far with it as maybe X has gone. But I do appreciate that they are angling it from, how do we increase the diversity of voices? How do we make sure people can collaborate more easily? How do we just really allow people to be who they really are, right? And, it's about kind of storytelling, but taking the traditional way of thinking about storytelling and flipping the narratives around, right? Telling the story in a fresh, different way, telling it in a way that's surprising. As a writer, I love this again because it's really part of what I love about writing, but turned into more of a video approach. And so inside of this, there's again some additional trend signals. So community fueled storytelling is a big deal. This is, of course, true across all social media, but I think especially on TikTok. Community conversations, being a part of those community conversations when they are happening, using the different features like stitches and duets and video replies. That literally allows you in your video content to be creating a conversation, joining a conversation, right? So whether that community is local and regional, or it is a community of an industry, or it is a community of people who are passionate about something, or it is a community culturally connected to something, using that is really valuable. Also, staying true to Delulu. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Delulu kind of trend. Delulu simply is a short way of saying delusional, right? And so really this trend has to do with dreaming and about being inspired and looking at what's possible, and really kind of creating content that is very magical seeming, very romantic. You'll see this is kind of partnered with something called hashtag OTP, which stands for One True Pairing. So this is where fans have a desire for two characters to come together, right? It's sort of this ideal experience in this fictional universe that they've created. And so that, along with Delulu, is really not necessarily always critical as much as it is, how do we really look at dreaming up things? How do we connect with people that are creating the magic for us, right? And so this is where I think, again, a lot of these trends, you have to be listening, you have to be paying attention to them. You can't Google a lot of them if you don't know what they are. But to me, there's a big thing around when it comes to trends on TikTok, especially with younger folks, that you don't misuse the trend, right? That you don't misuse the language, that you really understand what the community is doing with that trend, and then you really appropriately and creatively engage with it, not just hop on a bandwagon, right? We saw that with the brat trend. And I've been reading some great case studies about the brat trend, but similar thing, people who started using that trend in a way that didn't feel authentic got a lot of pushback online, and a lot of that came from TikTok users as well as Instagram users. One thing I've always said about TikTok that I think is important is oftentimes it's really important to just develop a personality. Now, you could develop the personality for a place, you could develop the personality for an object. It doesn't have to be a literal person, but having a kind of mascot or an empowered staff member that can really dedicate the time and energy needed to create a really, really sort of creative and unique TikTok kind of experience for people, it's really going to up your game in a lot of ways. So it's very hard, I think, on TikTok to do amazingly well when you're spread across a lot of platforms and nobody can really take the time to really focus and listen to what's going on there, right? So again, figuring out ways to have a person that really takes ownership of this platform, or figuring out ways to get your followers, right, your fans involved, can also be another sort of user-generated content perspective on this. Again, I work with a lot of destinations and places and attractions, and sometimes that user-generated content, bringing in people that love your location, community members, bringing in people who've been to your attraction or your restaurant many times, kind of figuring out, are any of those folks on TikTok, can they become part of how you're engaging, right? And can they help you come up with more ideas and more creativity so that you can really shine? Trend Force 3 is bridging the trust gap. So this is where TikTok has really been pushing because they want to, I think build out their shopping like perspective and really get people engaged in e-commerce and really get people engaged in advertising and conversion, right? A lot of that comes from trust. And so that's part of their plan. But also I think it's an outward trend for those of us that are using TikTok to really pay attention to. This sort of goes alongside of the idea of authenticity, which is a big conversation on TikTok, right? So how can you really represent your values? How can people believe what you say, trust what you say? There's so much misinformation online. And so I think TikTok, the community has its own way of figuring out how to fight against that misinformation, and also to try to create loyalty between brands, destinations, businesses, organizations, and the fans that they're connecting with. So again, just a few of the trend signals here. Talking TikTok lingo around can feel forced if you haven't built up your presence yet. So I mentioned this earlier, but again, get to know the language of TikTok, get to understand what trends mean, get to understand the hashtags that are out there. Yes, some of it is going to cross over with Gen Z and potentially Gen Alpha as they continue to grow up. But really don't use lingo incorrectly. Don't use it because you're trying to be cool. Really invest in the conversation, right? And get to know how people in your area or your industry or whatever it is are really connecting and talking on TikTok. And sometimes I really believe in creating your own little glossary for this so you really understand it, especially when you're new, when you're first starting out. And then trust the For You process. So again, this process I think is very valuable. The For You page a lot of times can connect you with other people in your various communities, local, regional, national, industry, whatever it is. It can sort of direct you to people that would be great co-collaborators, right? Great content creators to work with you, great content to stitch and duet, right? So really utilizing that algorithm to listen and learn, I think is a really powerful thing, right? And don't forget, as a brand, you should be engaging as well. So you're not just there to post content, you also want to comment, you want to heart, you want to do different things. And you can even save different types of content if you want to go back to it for inspiration, or you want to go back and reach out to a fan or to an influencer, things like that. So to me, you really want to be interactive, you really want to be conversational. And then brandship. I think of this as kind of like friendship, but brandship. And I kind of like that take on the word. I think this is really about, just deeper loyalty. So again, people have a million endless options, right? They can be on any platform looking at any business. They can buy things anytime. They can visit any place. They literally just have this endless flow of potential all the time. And so there's always going to be this deeper conversation as the internet continues to grow and there's more options, more things happening, more AI. We're going to keep seeing that. It's really, really important to have that sort of true relationship with your customers, especially your existing customers and your existing fans, because they are the people that can help you get seen by more new people, right? So if I can't engage the people that are already following me, that are already liking me, subscribing to me, I'm not going to be seen in the algorithms by anyone who isn't doing those things. So it's really, really important, I think, to focus on that relationship at all times. So I know we're coming up to the end. I have a couple final statements I want to make, but I do want to make sure there's no questions. And again, thanks for completing the poll. Like I said, it looks like about a third of you, even with some additional answers, are using TikTok. And so I invite you to share in the chat the link to your TikTok or the handle that you're using there so we can go and look you up if you'd like some additional followers. I'm glad to get on there and take a look and pay attention. Again, you also have the Q&A. So if there's any other questions, you can hop in there pretty easily and just drop a question there. But since I don't see any, I am going to just finish with my last couple points. There's kind of 2 points I wanted to make here at the end. And one is that a lot of what you can do on TikTok has to do with having a video first approach. And there's just a few tips I want to give you around thinking video first. One is anytime that you're documenting anything related to your brand, whether that's your store, whether that's different places in your community because you represent the destination, or maybe it's your attraction, or maybe it is your products themselves. Maybe it's your artwork, right? Maybe it's your performance if you're a musician. To me, what you really want to get in the mindset of doing is grabbing clips of different things. So really using your phone, you don't have to be a professional videographer, to grab 15-second clips, 30-second clips, 1-minute clips of a variety of different things, right? So this for me, when I'm doing a lot of work on TikTok and Instagram and things like that, a lot of times what I'm really looking at with the clients is how can we make sure that built into our workflow are these times where we get to document things. So let's say we're having an event. I need somebody during that event to document some of what's happening. Let's say I have a new product line. I might want to get all those products out and take an afternoon and really start to document some of what we're doing. I work with a lot of artists. I encourage them oftentimes to have one time a week where they even set their phone on a tripod and record themselves creating their artwork, right? Because as you start to build up what I continue to consider to be kind of a content library with all sorts of different cool clips, and hopefully you're organizing them on something like Google Drive and naming them so you know when you took that video and what the video is. If you can start to have that level of organization in your content library, what you're able to do is repurpose a lot of those things over and over and over to make new, cool video content, right? And so it's not always about you being a talking head on the video. Sometimes it's about showing them how you made a piece of art. Sometimes it's about showing them what it was like to walk down that trail, right? And turning, videoing yourself walking on the trail and then turning it into a time lapse, right? So there's all sorts of cool things we can do. The more that we're banking that content, the stronger it's going to get. I also think with video first, one of the things I want you to just be very aware of is, especially if you're newer to video or you haven't been doing it for that long, just realize you're going to get better and better and better and faster the more you do it. So practice definitively makes perfect, right? So in the beginning, making videos on TikTok can feel really time consuming. It might feel like, ugh, this is taking too much time. Reduce how often you're posting and get better and better and better at that process of creating video, and document what that process looks like for you, right? Because it isn't just going to be picking up your phone, videoing something and making the TikTok. There's always going to be, as brands, other things that happen before and after we make that TikTok. So to me, we really want to have that video first mindset, think in short clips, reuse great photographs if you have them, because they can always be mixed in. And then also don't be afraid to, like I said, jump into some of these tools like stitching or duetting, where you can use somebody else's video to create yours. That's what a stitch is. Duetting puts two videos side by side and you can react to that video. So really just giving yourself the space to explore those things and to, like I said, start to work out what your workflow is, what your process is, and know that that process is going to get faster, stronger, better as you go along. And then the last thing I just want to say is, if you're not sure if TikTok is right for you, a lot of times when people are trying to answer that question, should we be on TikTok? We're not there yet. There's a lot of just focus on demographics and kind of these details. And I think, yes, it's great to go read a bunch of studies, but I think the top things that you can do to figure out if you feel like TikTok's somewhere you want to be, there's kind of 3 steps. One is create an account and play with it. Play with the tools and see how you feel about it. Do you like it? Do you like the tool itself from a very functional standpoint? Maybe you like Instagram better. If you do, then spend your time on Instagram. We don't have to be on TikTok, right? So get in there and just to start learning the app, start playing around with it. The second thing you can do is go look at other people that do something similar to you. See how they're using TikTok. Does it seem like there's a community there? Does it seem like there's engagement there? Do you feel like what is happening with other people in your industry that you could do something, not just similar, but maybe even more unique, more different, more fun, right? Because you are going to compete against them potentially. So just looking at your competition. And then I think the third thing you can really do is actually search for some hashtags, actually get on the system and participate, right? You don't have to do it every day. You could go in there for 30 minutes, search for some specific hashtags related to your region or to your industry or to your products and services. See what other people are doing, see what kind of questions they're asking, see what kind of interactivity is going on. Are they doing live streams? Are they doing other types of things like duets and stitches? How does that look, right? So I think doing that is sometimes the best way to make the decision about whether or not TikTok is worth your time. Rather than looking at a bunch of studies, demographics, and trends and saying, oh, I think we should do this, right? I feel like it's a very practical choice. And honestly, if you're already stretched across your social media, if you're already doing Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and you don't have time for another platform, then don't do another platform. I want to give you permission to say no. And that's just because I would rather you did one or two or three things with 100% of your focus and energy and passion than I would for you to have 7 or 8 social media platforms and they're all only getting a percentage of your energy, right? Because then we tend to see nobody really 100% wins. So to me, those are great ways to think about how you can decide to explore this opportunity if you're not doing it yet. Anastasia, thanks so much for sharing both of your handles there. I'm excited to be able to just connect with somebody who's using the system and see what they're working on. I will say I know in rural America, there's actually, sometimes less people using sites like TikTok when it comes to business and organizations and marketing. When you get into larger cities, just because the pool of people is larger, you'll see there's a larger pool of people. But overall, I think TikTok does represent opportunities for a lot of us. And it can potentially be opening new markets and giving you a way to really have a unique and different voice for your brand than you have had before. So I know we're at the top of the hour. Again, it was a small group today, but I really appreciate everyone being here because we had to reschedule. I really appreciate everyone's just support and kindness and great messages over the last 3 weeks as we've navigated the hurricane here in Asheville and Western North Carolina and beyond, because now the hurricanes are touching everyone down here. But again, thanks for joining me today. As usual at JB Media, we say you do amazing things, more people should know. And like I said, I'll be sending out this recording as well as the slide deck. And all my personal information is in there. So I just invite you to connect with me to learn more and let me know what you're doing on social media. And always consider me a resource if you have questions. But as usual, thank you all so much. I hope you will join us the first Wednesday of November for our next digital drop-in, where I'll be talking about new features and updates around YouTube. So we're going to continue on this video theme. But again, thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.